Hello, welcome to Crime Cafe. I am so excited to be doing my first Psycho Sunday. I'm so pumped about it, and hopefully this video goes a little bit smoother than my last one. It was like, I'm new, so I'm getting used to all of this. I know nothing about this stuff, so just kind of bear with me if you can, and hopefully I'll just get better at it. So, for the first Psycho Sunday, I'm bringing you the Toybox Killer. I just find, this case really struck a chord with me. It just made me see things differently. Like, I can't look at a trailer the same way anymore. It left an impact on me. So, I wanted to cover it as my first Psycho Sunday because this guy was crazy and just rotten to the core. I need to add a disclaimer to this video. It is really heavy. It involves rape, drugs, animal abuse. If any of those things are triggers for you, don't watch this video. This guy, I don't want to call him a man, this guy is awful, and he has zero respect for women, so I'm just going to add that in there. So first we're going to meet David Parker Ray. He is the leader of the Toybox Killer. He was born November 6, 1930 in New Mexico into a family of abuse. His dad was just awful. He had a sister and a mom. She abused drugs and alcohol, and so did his dad. But his dad abused all three of them, and it was not a very, very good upbringing at all. When he was 10 years old, his parents decided to get a divorce, and neither one of them wanted either of the kids. So they went off and did their own thing. He didn't see his mom much at all. She went into drugs and alcohol and that kind of lifestyle and didn't come around. The kids moved with their grandfather, who was also very, very abusive, very strict, very stern, but his dad did come around to see them. Now, when his dad came around, he brought pornographic magazines for David. They had a lot of BDSM in them. Not that there's anything wrong with that at all, but I'm thinking he probably thought that that's how you treat women. I'm not sure, but he didn't have a father figure to steer him in the right direction. So because his grandfather was crap too, him and his sister were really shuttled around from family member to family member. They were malnourished, kind of ignored, and just left to fend for themselves. During adolescence, David was really, really teased in school, so he would go to school and get bullied really bad. He was really, really shy around girls, and he got picked on so badly for that. So to cope with everything that was happening in school and at home, all the bullying, all the abuse, he started abusing drugs and alcohol at an early age. After high school, he served in the U.S. Army, and he later became a mechanic, a really good one. People who knew him in town always thought that he was just very, very friendly and kind of a guy that would just do anything for anyone. If someone was in a hard spot, he would do something for them for free or for less. He was always looking out for people in that way. So he just seemed like a pretty decent guy to his neighbors. So David had married 4 times, divorced 4 times, and he had 2 daughters. One wants nothing to do with him, and the other one is Jessie Ray Parker. One of his daughters wants nothing to do with him at all, and the second one is his right-hand woman. She grew up to be pretty tough. She is a biker. She's also a mechanic like her dad. She was bisexual, so she had relations with men and women. She had a very aggressive personality, people say, and that made people fear her. She was very outgoing, extremely outgoing. She acted as if she had a lot of power, and she was extremely loyal to her friends and family. So if you messed with any of them, watch out. She did not mess around with people. So during David's first marriage, he confided in his wife and told her that he tied a woman to a tree, raped her, and killed her. And his wife thought that he was just kind of having a mental issue, that he was just not right in the head and that wasn't true. And she never went any further with that. She ended up divorcing him because he had strange behavior. A lot of his wives said that. I'm also going to tell you a little bit about one of David's friends or companions, Dennis Yancey. He was another right-hand man for David. He was a huge troublemaker growing up. Halloween actually had to be canceled because him and his friends, they were strangling cats and tipping over gravestones. So Halloween was canceled for the entire town. He loved being known as a troublemaker. He thought that it was the coolest thing ever to have that reputation, that badass reputation. He got older, he entered the Navy, and he had a dishonorable discharge. And he was just really, really proud of that for whatever reason. Now that you met David, Jesse, and Dennis, let me tell you a little bit about what they did together. Jesse would go to a town bar, local bar, and she would, get people drunk, find someone, and she would drug them. She would take them to her dad's house, where she didn't really know what was happening, supposedly. They would go into his home and he would do whatever to them. Dennis was also another one who did that for him, but his story is a little bit more intense. Dennis had a girlfriend where he claims that David raped her and then told Dennis to kill her and get rid of the body. And Dennis got caught up with Jesse and David, and he agreed to give over his girlfriend. He agreed to kill his girlfriend and then dispose of her body. They were doing this for a little while. I don't know how long. David claims he has been doing this for years, but during this entire process, David meets the love of his life, his new companion. David meets Cindy Hendy, and he just falls in love with her. They meet each other at a park. David is actually being a park ranger at this moment in his life. He meets Cindy there, and she tells him that she is actually on the run. She fled from Washington State because she was trying to deal some cocaine to an undercover cop, and he was going to arrest her, and she ran and landed there. A little backstory on Cindy Henny. She did not have a good upbringing at all. She was molested by her stepfather at 11 years old, and when she went to her mom to tell her about it, she did not believe her at all. She actually threw her out of the house, and Cindy did not cope with that well at all. She grew up to be extremely violent. She didn't have any remorse about anything. She was smaller, but really fierce. They would say she was 105 pounds of just pure muscle, and she could beat up anyone. She actually beat up a 250-pound woman in a bar once. She would go after men and beat them up. She did not care. She did not tolerate anything, and people were kind of afraid of her. So David fell for Cindy and just her personality and the way that she was, and he really thought that she could make him look more normal. He really enjoyed manipulating people and liked having the town think that he was a good guy, and he thought having a girlfriend would just, look really good. He also really liked her personality and thought that she would be a good asset to him. He told her about his sexual desires, about the things that he has done, and his dream of owning a trailer. He wanted one of those to put in his yard, and he wanted that to be like a toy box where he can take women and do whatever he pleased. A torture chamber, really. He let her know how he was into Satanism and his beliefs and what he felt should be done to women, and that this was his desire, and he wanted her to help him along the way. And she agreed. They spent $100,000 on a trailer to put in David's backyard and fill it with torturous things. So David and Cindy says it was David who built these things, but I'm sure she helped in one way or another. He built his own sex toys. He made contraptions that would be entered into women, and they would have spikes on the ends of them. He had electrical boxes that he would attach to women and electrocute them. He made a couple different penetration machines that were just ridiculous. They weren't created with pleasure in mind whatsoever. He had ankle spreaders that were enough to pop women's hips out of place or tear their muscle. He had what looked like a gynecologist chair set up in the middle of the room, and then a mirror on top so the women can see everything that was being done to them. He would start off every session with a tape recorder. He would play that, and it was a really long one, and he would say everything that he was going to do to them, how he was going to torture them. He would go on and to tell them everything that he was going to do and what they deserved, and he just really liked to inflict fear before getting started. He actually had this wooden contraption where he would tie the women to it, and it would have them in a position where they were bent over, and he would have other men come in and pay him, and they would rape the woman, and they would also have dogs come in and rape the women as well. It's just awful person, if you can even call him a person. So Cindy went right along with all of this stuff, and a month after she moved in, she actually got in touch with a friend who was moving out towards them, moving into their town, and she was nervous about it. She didn't know anybody, so she was really excited to hear from Cindy, and couldn't wait to go out with her and hang out and actually know someone. She was just having a hard time making friends, and it just made her more comfortable. It always makes you feel more comfortable when you know someone. It's a little bit familiar then. So she met her at the bar, the local bar. She got invited to their home. She was immediately blindfolded and restrained. She was sexually assaulted and tortured. She was victimized with cattle prods and electric shock. Just really took his time with her. This was Cindy's first time torturing someone. He didn't want to scare her, so he just kind of introduced it to her pretty slowly, and took his time with her. Angie was stuck there for 4 days being tortured by these people with all different kinds of objects, and it was 4 days later, after her kidnapping, that she told David that she just really needed to go home. Her son needed her, and she just kind of talked to him like nothing was wrong, that she was okay with everything that had happened, and that she just really needed to get home to her son. He couldn't be without her, and she was gone long enough that she needed to get home. And David said, "If I knew you were this nice, I would have never kidnapped you." And he actually released her. He really, really did. And she was walking down the road, just disheveled, and an off-duty police officer pulled her over and put her in the car. She did tell him what happened, and he believed her. He wanted to take her to the station and get a statement written up and more information about it, and she refused to go. She did not have a good history with cops, and she didn't trust them. So Cindy's daughter was going to have a baby soon, and she wanted to go home and see the birth of her grandchild, spend a little bit of time with her, and David was okay with that, but he told her that they needed to get him a sex slave during the time that she was gone because he just couldn't take it. So they went out and found a sex worker, and they tricked her into getting into the car and taking her home. As soon as they got home, they put a collar on her and they chained her in their house. This wasn't in the toy box, but this was in their house. They had her chained up like an animal, and Cindy went to see her family, and David was left with her. So of course David plays the tape that he played for everyone, and it says everything that he's going to do to her. It's going, like, he says that a gag is necessary because she's going to be screaming in pain. And Cindy was gone for 2 days at this point. She comes back, and David needs to go to work, so Cindy is left with Cynthia, and she's in the living room chained. Cindy goes into the kitchen to make some tuna sandwiches. She's in there, and she leaves Cynthia locked up in the living room. She has her collar on, she's chained, but she realizes that Cindy left the keys on the table. So she makes a run for it. She gets the keys, unlocks herself, and she calls 911. Cindy hears this happening from the kitchen, and she books it into the living room. She comes in and hits her over the head with a lamp or some kind of object, and Cynthia actually gets something to stab Cindy with, and she books it out of the house, and she is just running for her life at this point. And Cindy is back home, just like flabbergasted on what is happening. And she calls David right away, and he leaves work and he's coming back home, and Cynthia is booking it to find anywhere to go. And she busts through a woman's trailer door and tells her everything that's happened, tells her to call the police. And she does, and she gets taken to the hospital. So the police come and talk to Cynthia, and they go directly to David's house. No one is home, so they do a safety sweep because she did escape from their house. So they do a safety sweep inside the home, and they find pegboards and ropes with pulleys on them, a box with shackles, and a fan inside of that box for an air source. David had books on medical stuff that you can do to people. It's on Satanism, but they found no one inside the house, so they went looking for them. About 15 minutes later, the police find Cindy and David driving along the road, and they pull them over, and they actually admit to looking for Cynthia, and they said that she is their friend and she's trying to kick drugs, and they're helping her with the withdrawal. So she's going to lie to do anything to get out of it, and that's why they needed to keep her cooped up in their home. The police are not buying it. They do not believe it at all, and they take them in. The small town police, I mean, this is a really, really small town. They realize that this case is far beyond anything that they can handle, and they call the FBI. And I think that's great when police officers can do that, can realize this is too big for us. We can't handle this right now. It's good. It's a good thing. So they call the FBI in, and they come and look at everything, look at his house, and they go into the trailer. And they find hundreds of torture devices. Hundreds. They find books, leg spreaders, chain, rubber rope, intubation tube, oxygen mask, a machine to shock women's breasts, and who knows what else. The big black chair, the OBGYN chair with red straps, and of course his tapes that he makes them listen to. Now, he had tons of tapes recorded of him doing torturous things to women as well. So they're watching these tapes, and these women get tortured, and there is one that you can't see the woman's face, but on her leg you can see a tattoo, and it's a pretty distinct tattoo, a unique one. And they're wondering, maybe we can find this woman. So they put this photo of this woman's tattoo out into the media, and this story is being covered like crazy. It is national news. It is being watched by everyone. So this woman sees this tattoo being shown on TV, and she recognizes it, and she goes to her ex-daughter-in-law and says, "Don't you have a tattoo like this?" And this woman's name is Kelly, and yes, she has a tattoo like that. It is her tattoo. To get into Kelly's story, years before this photo was entered into the press, she was married to her husband, and they had a fight. So she wanted to go out at night, have some fun, get her mind off the fight, and she goes to the local bar. And she's hanging out there drinking, and who does she see but Jesse Ray Parker? She's hanging out with Jesse, hanging out with some other friends. Her other friends are going to leave, and she wants to stay behind, and because she's having a great time, and Jesse says, "I'll give you a ride home, not a big deal." Well, that's all she remembers. She does not remember anything else. Jesse was supposed to take her home, but she doesn't remember anything. She woke up on the side of the road, not knowing how she got there, not knowing what happened the night before, and she went home, and her husband thought that she cheated. Her husband was livid, and he thought that she cheated on him, and she couldn't remember anything, and he was done. He actually divorced her. And so they're divorced. Here, years later, there is her tattoo on the national news coming from a guy that they're calling the Toybox Killer. Can you imagine that? Not knowing anything. So she sees this and she is getting flashes because she would have dreams and nightmares of this, like, not being able to move, and this man walking around, and posters, and this voice that she would hear. She was really starting, like, she would have these nightmares about it, and she just thought that she was having strange nightmares, but she's thinking, no, these are memories coming back to me. She actually had to go in to the police station and identify herself through pictures and video footage of her being tortured. I can't even imagine that. That's awful. So they have Cindy and David in custody. Cindy starts to cooperate with the police. She is saying that she has nothing to do with anything, but David did tell her that he has been torturing and killing women for years, and he knows exactly where to hide bodies because he is a park ranger. He knows where the best places are to hide a body. They live in a town called Truth or Consequences, and around that area there is this huge lake, and it's way, way too big to search everywhere, but they believe that there are bodies there. They have not found any, not a single one, but they do believe that he disposed of bodies in that area. This is where Cindy tells on Dennis Yancey as well. She gives him up and they pull him in, and he does admit to killing his girlfriend, but he said that it was at the request and demand of David. And David was like a god to Dennis and to his daughter, Jessie. They listened to anything that he said. He can manipulate them so easily. And when he said that he needed to kill her and to get rid of her body for him to be trusted, he was going to do that. And he told the police where he buried her body. The police went and she wasn't there. So they do believe that David did this to see how deep Dennis was into it, and just to have something on him, and probably moved the body to somewhere that he knows. So yeah, they didn't find that body either. Now David, he cooperated to an extent with the police, but it was kind of more like he was talking kind of fantasy-ish, like it was a story and not in realistic terms, and they didn't know exactly what to believe because they had the evidence that they had, but they didn't have bodies, so they just weren't sure where truth met fantasy when it came to David. So David had 3 separate trials. They had one trial for Cynthia. She was the one that escaped, was kept there for a couple days, and then she escaped and got them caught. There was a trial for Angie. She was Cindy's friend, the one who was kept there for 4 days and was released because she told them that her little boy could not be without her. And then there was Kelly, the one with the leg tattoo, who didn't remember anything and lost her marriage over this. Cynthia's trial resulted in a mistrial and then a retrial, and he was convicted of all 12 counts. Angie unfortunately passed away before the trial could happen, so they didn't have that trial, which I think is wrong because it did happen and he should be tried on it anyway. I just think that's wrong. I understand fair trial and everything, I know, but still. And then the trial against Kelly, and he was convicted in that one as well. In Kelly's trial, David agreed to a plea deal. He was sentenced in 2001 to serve 224 years in the abduction and sexual torture of 3 young women. His daughter, Jessie, was charged and sentenced 2.5 years with an additional 5 years probation. Don't agree with that one at all. I think she should have got more because you have the ability to do that to people. Who's to say you won't do it again? 2.5 years? No. And then Dennis Yancey, he was convicted of homicide and the murder of his girlfriend Marie Parker. And in 2000, Cindy received a sentence of 36 years for her role in the crime. She was actually released on July 15, 2019, after serving the 2 years of her parole in prison. So She got 19 years. So David Parker Ray, the Toybox Killer, 0 murder convictions because they never found any bodies or anything like that. But he is suspected of around 60 murders. He actually died of a heart attack on May 28, 2002. He was 62 years old, and he was in Leah, I think it's called Leah County Correctional Facility in Hobbs, New Mexico. So he did die in prison. I would really love to know if you think all the sentencing is fair. His was fair, definitely. But let me know what you think of their sentencing. I would love to hear it. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. I will be here every Wednesday. I'll bring a true crime video, and then Sundays I will bring a Psycho Sunday, like today. Hit that notification bell and you will be notified every single time I upload a new video. And I'm so happy that you joined me for this little coffee talk. Thank you. Enjoy your coffee.